For a 3D game developer, building game assets play an important role in the development cycle. 3D game assets can be created in a variety of methods. It entirely depends on the team you are working with. Sometimes, one approach is preferable to another. Now let's look at the most efficient way to create the assets. When it comes to building game assets, the idea of what we are building is very essential. Firstly, we must find asset requirement in the game. Here are a few questions which you should ask yourself. Why do we need assets in game? How often it is going to get used? What should be the size of the asset on the screen? Then comes the stage of researching for the concept art. But where can we find concept art? Well, we can look at Google, ArtStation, Pinterest and social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, etc. Here is an example of the concept. The concept here is to create a stylized rock island with a center stage showcasing a level reward surrounded by boulders and foliage. Now that the concept is complete, we can begin modeling. 3D modeling is the process of shaping our model according to an idea. In this case, rock island. One of the most important stages of asset development is modeling. It will begin by rough blocking the scene's elements with minimal geometry and good edge flow. Following the blocking, it's time to start sculpting the elements. To make geometry sculptable, you must first create a high poly mesh. We'll start detailing the mesh with various brushes and get it ready for the final appearance. Now that the sculpting is complete, it's time to optimize the high poly mesh to make it game ready. This is referred to as retopology. The high poly mesh is converted into a simpler low poly mesh here. This newly created mesh will now serve as the final mesh for the scene, with all the overlaying details of the high poly mesh. We are halfway there. Now we only need to make a UV map for the retopologized low poly mesh. The unwrapping workflow is the flat representation of 3D models in 2D space. This will help us in getting better results either by increasing performance or improving texture resolution. So far, we have completed most of the development stages and are nearing the end of the asset generation process, which includes baking and texturing. Baking is the common term used in the 3D workflow, which refers to baking the details from high poly to low poly mesh. If you want to add more details to the model, this is when texturing comes into the picture. In Substance Painter, texture the asset using the physically based rendering, that is PBR method. The last step is presentation, lighting and rendering. This is where you can make an asset appear fantastic. Here you will use Arnold renderer to deal with lights to ensure that our entire scene has a consistent appearance and feel. So that's how the typical workflow of 3D game asset development works. Again, it may vary and depend on the size of the project.